Today I'm going to talk about using variable data inside of Adobe Illustrator, which is kind of an obscure functionality, but when some people really need to use it, this is truly a lifesaver and can increase a person's productivity to, in fact, replace a whole team of people and just reduce errors and increase the output rate. So each person who has this particular kind of task can be extra effective in their company, and they can take on more jobs. And the way the way some of this workflow stuff goes is that oftentimes people have to produce many documents from one document, and they would have a template with some placeholder text frames, maybe some placeholder images, and they would get a spreadsheet of data. Say it was maybe for a company's business cards, and they want to put everybody in their company into a template so that they can export a bunch of PDFs to print and create everybody their own cards. So in the old days, they would pretty much go manually, and some people do this to this day, is they would go ahead and type everybody's information in and export the files one by one. And in some really small companies, it might not be a problem when there's just a couple of people, but if there's 10, 20, or 50 people in an organization for business cards, it could get really tedious. And InDesign's data merge has been used for doing a lot of variable data, and it's very easy. However, in some other situations, such as for engraving or any kind of manufacturing with specialized machines, the preferred software is Illustrator because of the different printing and vector scaling capabilities it has. Because Photoshop can also do variable data, but it's all pixel based. So with Illustrator, you can not only create many different documents using their variable data feature, you can also make sure that they're all printing just the way you want it, and using spot colors or anything you'd like. The only issue was with this is that the variable data functionality inside of Illustrator was set up from the beginning to use a whole different method than InDesign or Photoshop. And if some worker was to get a spreadsheet from Excel of many different names, addresses, and phone numbers, in InDesign and Photoshop, you could just import the CSV file. It's a comma-separated value file, or a tab delimited text file, and everything would just be going from there without any extra effort. However, in Illustrator, the way it would work is you have to have a specially formatted XML file, and the Adobe instructions specifically say that you should have a developer inside of a team to code how that XML file gets made from whichever source. But most people usually prefer to work with just spreadsheets, and that's something that you'd expect after coming from InDesign, where it's just really easy to use a spreadsheet and create a whole bunch of different PDFs. So in Illustrator, the manual way of doing this is when you go to Window and you go to Variables, there comes up your Variables panel. And here's what you would do. You would just make a text frame, and you would just say, put in some kind of placeholder in there. And then in the variables, you would go ahead and click this button that says Make Text Dynamic. It looks like a little Lego with this gear on there. So I'm going to click that, and as you can see, it opened up a new variable in here. And in the variables column, this name is called variable 1, and in the objects, it says text. So this doesn't really do anything by itself, but what you can do is press this button that says Capture Dataset, and now a new dataset appears that says Dataset 1. It's just the default name they give you, and this is what your record is. So think of it as a row inside of your Excel spreadsheet. So what it did was, when I pushed the camera button, it captured the contents of this text box, and it's now in this record. So now if I was to change this, edit it to say new text, there's an asterisk that appears there. It means you've changed it, and it's saying there's been a change. So if you want to proceed to another record or do something else, it's going to put up a warning, and it says, are you sure you want to, your record has changed, so do you want to do it? Well, in this case, when I change the contents of this text, I'm going to press the camera button again. I pressed it twice accidentally. Okay. So I just did one undo to undo the third one. So now I have two records. So the first time I put in just this and I captured it once for dataset 1. Then I put in the new in front of text to make new text. And I captured it again, so now it's dataset 2. And now that you have two records, you can use these little arrows to go from previous to the next dataset. So when I cycle it through, the text changes because we've captured that information and it's now in the document. All right, and now if I change this again, and that asterisk is going to appear, if I was to switch to the next one, it says the current values have not been captured and will be discarded upon switching datasets. Proceed. And when you say yes, it'll be like you never changed it because it automatically remembers the original content. Okay, so far it seems like you can create a variable data document by simply typing in different things here and hitting this button there, but it seems kind of really backwards because the purpose is not to keep typing things in there over and over. It's really a tedious process. You just want to import something so that it would do it for you. Well, the way they would have preferred you to do it is you would set up your variables, you would bind them, then you would go to the flyout menu, and then you would save what's called a variable library, and it saves you an XML file, and then automatically just goes to your desktop, and it's named a very generic variables.xml. So I'm going to save it, and let's open it up in the text editor and see what it has in there. Okay, so I'm going to open it up. Okay, so here it is. Now, what we're seeing here is a bunch of XML stuff, and then you can kind of make sense out of these tags. It says variables, variable is named variable1, and inside of our Illustrator document, it's over here, it's called variable1. And then where it says sample datasets, that's the actual records. So that's the rows. And then in a dataset called dataset 1, we have our text, and then in our dataset 2, we have new text. So the Adobe way, as according to their documentation, would be you would just make your template, you would bind your variables and name them so that this name is how you desire, and then you would hand this file off to a developer whose job would be to create whatever code necessary to add more of these blocks and name them accordingly and bring in the data accordingly to these placeholders. And when I saw that, I realized that what's missing is a way to not have that necessarily happen, but just to have a script automatically put in stuff from a text data file into this kind of format, and then when you import that, everything works. So I set out to write a script, and after about several months of hard work, we're able to get a rudimentary test out, and then after collaborating with a bunch of folks around the world about their workflows, it's been refined to, as of this recording, it's at version 8. And it's got a brand new interface and is a lot more easier to use. And I'm going to launch it right now with this sample demonstration lesson of creating some restaurant menu items. This is not a traditional business card one because that is rather cliche, and I wanted to do something that would be about food because everybody loves food, and so why not? Alright, so here's what I did. I'm going to close this down, and we're going to open up some of the we're going to open up my sample file, which was available at the link, which, by the way, the link, is it going to be available for all time?
Again?
The link?
Yeah, it's that Google one.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you have it on your computer?
It's on my Google Drive, so do you think it's going to be all right? So just share it?
Well, for the purposes of, you can probably, well, don't stop it. Go ahead and find that link and show it to them, and then they can note it.
All right, so over here, and let's see, it says share.
Yeah, so zoom in on, well, there. Isn't there a way to shorten the link?
Yeah, actually I do have a shortened link.
That
and
there is it, right?
It is over here, that's right. So this,
so tell them that.
Yeah, that's the link, and I'll just make it nice big text right there. Well, that's a little too huge. All right, so it's at this shortened URL.
And what I can do is I'll add that link on the notes in the YouTube video.
Okay, great. So you can get the samples file set over here, and it has a version for CC 2015 and CS6 and CS5, and I do have CS5 on my computer, so I was able to go back and re-edit it to make sure that it's good, but I don't have CS6, so as I've used some appearance effects in the text that might kind of break it, so the CS6 might be a little in need of some reconstruction. Okay, so I'm going to open up that file, and we're going to check out this template, but first, before we do anything, let's see what our end goal is. The end goal is to produce many different documents from one document and make it be really robust, so you can keep on doing this in many different configurations without much effort. So the result is over here. Let's go ahead and view this nice and big. Okay. Okay, so how do we make this bigger? Oh, well, yeah, that. Okay, so right here we have all the different menu items for a fictional, restaurant or some kind of kiosk or something. So we have different kind of things going on here. You can see the name changes. This name changes right there. You can see the picture changes, the copy in this little box changes, and also a few other things change. And it almost looks like they're completely different documents in some ways. I mean, you can definitely see the similarities, but the background's definitely different, and the pictures and the text is all different, and different things appear. So it's almost a good question is, how is this possible that you've made all these different files using only one template and without having to do a whole bunch of manual rearranging? You just do one setup and then you export them in one go, and the computer does it. And this is what this is going to be all about. Okay, so I'm going to open up my template right here in the templates folder of the zip. If you go ahead and download that file, it should open up into this folder. That's this zipped presentation folder. And there's the menu template right here. So I'm going to open it up in my Illustrator. Okay, and let's see what's inside of this document. Now I'm going to do just an outline view to show you what it's supposed to look like, because if it is open in older versions, some of the appearances might create some different, for example, the drop shadows will become rasterized and form an image box around here. Well, this is the way it's supposed to be in its native state. Okay, so what do we have here? we have in our layers several layers. Now first, starting from the bottom up, we have a background layer, and it has only just 3 rectangles. They're the exact same size of the artboard, and they're named these different arbitrary names. And one of them is light blue, and then the next one, when I hide this eyeball, next one is a little kind of pale pink looking, and then this one's the green one. So as they're turned on and off, you can see they kind of stack on top of each other, and that's how the background changes. The background changes because some of these things are hidden and shown, or vice versa. Okay, so that's the background layer. Then there's a layer called specials, and these guys work the same way that the background layer does. They're little objects in here to do whatever you want. Pretty much, they're groups. They're not. They don't have to be any special kind of art object. So in this case, they can be just images or vector lines, anything, or text. And what they are is based on some data inside of the spreadsheet. All of these things will be either shown or hidden. So for some of these different menu items, if you want to put it on special, you can do something extra to your data to make this thing hide or make this thing show. So when you export this, it looks like completely different things. One has a big old thing behind it that says special. And in my images layer, there's only one image. This is a placed image. You can see by the X going through it that it's not an embedded one. Also, because the embed button is active and not grayed out, you can tell that it's a placed link. And the way you do it is you just go to File and File and Place over here. And then you can pick any kind of valid format image, like for example a PNG. You can place it. When you place it in there, it'll come in. By the way, in the File Place dialog, there are some options over here in case this does not happen. If they do not come in with this X, there's this link over here. This link button is checked, meaning that when it's placed in there, it's going to be a linked item like we need, because
so basically if I change that linked image, it changes here too.
Yeah, that's right. So that's how we control what image shows up in this placeholder frame, is by the image path inside of the data. Okay, so this hamburger, yeah, it's an image that's been placed in there, and not only that, I've used a lot of appearance things in the appearance panel. So in here we have an outer glow, and I think you can see it a lot more pronounced with the green background. So in here, if I turn off the outer glow, you can see the outer glow disappears. Now I turn it on, and it's glowing. Well, what this means is that when this placeholder is replaced, it's going to keep the outer glow on whatever image is in there. So this is a really nice Illustrator specific feature that could be used in all kinds of different ways, because you have a lot of power with this appearance panel. You can go to the effect gallery and do all kind of insane things if you'd like, and then the next one that you have will have the exact same appearance, which is pretty fascinating. Okay, and in addition, you can just hide things without deleting them, but we don't really need that graphic pen effect. Okay, proceeding next to the next layer, I have a layer called text, in which my dynamic text is. Text can be any kind of text frame. This is text on a path, and what this is just a regular text frame that is on a path, but it's like all this appearance stuff. It's also done by the appearance panel. You see the red in there and all that. Well, if you go to appearance, that's how I did it. It's all these different things in here. There's a fill which has inner glow and the outer glow and all kind of different things that I played around with, all these different strokes. And yeah, what this helps you do is just to keep just one item as far as Illustrator is concerned, like one art object, but it can look totally different without you having to put in additional paths or images or anything. And when it changes, the new text will totally look the same way. You can in fact do other things with it, such as you can put a 3D effect on there, which is going to kind of increase the time of processing each of the files. Well, this isn't quite going to work because I have some raster effects and it's going to extrude the whole box.
I have a question. If I were to do a word that's a lot longer than what would normally fit in there, is there a way to rescale the font?
Yeah, that's a great question. And in InDesign, they have at least a warning.
Is there a copy fit option in Illustrator?
But there's not one in Illustrator. And so what you have to do is either make sure that what you're going to write in there is going to accommodate your space, or what you can do is at least in some ways control it using things like text traps. So if your sentence, and this only works with area text when you use text trap. So if your area text box was going to have text that was going to be longer in a certain area, then maybe you can use the object text trap on that object that it was going to run into to make sure that it kind of flows around there. So in other words, it's very rudimentary and it's not very advanced, so it's not going to even tell you when the overset is happening. So for this text on the path, since it's just the name of a product, say, and I know it's not going to be longer than a certain size, then I made sure that it's scaled at, well, the 40 right there, it seemed to accommodate all of my text just fine. However, in a more advanced topic, you can do exactly what you're talking about. However, you have to run an extra script during your processing, which is a little bit of another different topic, but it is possible, and I can show you actually at the end if we get through this. And it's really the power of Illustrator too. It is a little bit more manual, but at the same time, when you do this work to set up a document, all the following work will be a lot faster, just working a little bit harder, and then all the payoff will be during when you have to make the myriad of files that you're going to have as your result. Okay, so in here, I just have these text boxes. Now this is an area text box, and it's got a thing, an effect on there. You see this border, this background there? This is actually not any kind of path around it. It actually goes, it goes with the text box. The way this is done is I went into my appearance and I put in an effect on there. This is called the rounded rectangle effect. So when you put this effect on there, it lets you see, it lets you change all these different parameters, and now you can see how it changed to an ellipse.
I'm so glad you're showing me that because I didn't know that was possible.
Yeah, and then this way you can have really cool effects. You can even put brushes around your text frames and all kind of good stuff. Okay, and
How do you get to that from the fill panel?
What you do is you go down to the effects, or you can go down here, up there to the effects, and you can go to convert to shape, and that's where you find that effect. It actually, at first I thought it was rather useless because it just really converted something to shape, and I thought, why would anybody want to do that? But in fact, you can do some really interesting things with it, such as and this kind of has a lot to do with the appearance features, but I'll just show you guys really quick. Okay, so I have this text right there, just a regular text, and what I can do is go to my appearance panel and I can put a new fill in there. First of all, let's make it some kind of bright fill you can see on my dark background, and let's make this text a little bigger. Okay, so now what I can do is go to convert to shape on that fill. I probably want to duplicate the fill so that I still have my yellow text. All right, I'm going to go to convert shape, and so do rectangle. Instead of doing relative, I'll do absolute though, and I'll just put an absolute, not 20 inches. How about just 2 inches and 0.125 inches. Okay, so now we have this interesting effect here where you have this bar, and it's relative to the entire text box, but it's not relative to the text inside, so that it's always going to stay in the middle. But you're not really limited to, you don't have to resize this thing either. Like say if you wanted to create a weird underline bar, well, you can also do other effects on here, such as the transform one. So I'm going to transform it and say I want to, rotate it or do something crazy like that. And I can increase the number of copies and create a thing like that for whichever purpose. And also I can make it go behind the characters and look like that. So now we just have this star floating around there. And well, that's just,
very cool.
Somebody might find that useful. Yeah, there's a lot of things that you can combine that could really be interesting. And I could have also maybe put I just want to try this actually. I could also go down, I want to try some of these 3D effects here. So let's do a 3D one and let's see what it does. What does it do? Okay, so as you can see, we have a whole 3D looking thing that it actually doesn't even appear inside of the outlines at all, but when you zoom in, when you zoom this out, it's going to stay in there. And then furthermore, you can have this saved as a style. So any one of these appearance effects you can save as a graphic style. So I'm going to go and make a new one, and the graphic style is going to look like that. And see, whenever I clicked on this text and I clicked on that button, it applied it down here. Now this is a point text object, but same thing. And as opposed to the area text, which does not scale when you change the bounds, it just changes that. Well, this does change it, so whoever might find that useful.
Is that how you get the circle, the rounded box to be part of the adjust with size and stuff?
Oh, this? On this one?
Yeah.
On this, yeah, so this one is, back to this guy, yeah, it's just a rounded rectangle, and it basically hangs around the area text. So this is an area text object, and it's always going to be that size. The setting here is to have relative extra width and extra height.
Okay.
Right, and there's also absolute.
So absolute was what you were showing us, but relative was that one. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so and some of these things to some people might be totally useless, and why would you even never use that? Other people will be like, I can't live without that. So. And this is kind of like this whole feature too, because a lot of people use Illustrator for purely creative purposes, but other people, they just have to make these business cards, or their boss makes them do it, and if they don't do it, it's bad news. So they're really happy about this feature. Okay, so the next one is going to be my graph layer. That's one of the more advanced features of this entire deal, and it's actually one of the least used features ever, because first of all, the graph feature inside of Illustrator, it's not a really creative item, and it's kind of cumbersome and hard to use. But little did people know that actually you can make variable graphs that work from a spreadsheet too. And at first I thought, well, we don't really need to have that in this script at all, because who needs it? But then I decided, I want to go for the gold, and I want to have all 4 variable types. The variable types that are available are text, image placeholders, visibility, where you can hide and show things, and graph data. And as soon as I did that, after about a month or something, there was a person in Austria who works in a newspaper or magazine, whose job was to make these layout spreads, and he was doing it in Illustrator, and he was actually having to use the graphs to display temperature data for weather, and he found this pretty useful, and some other people might as well. So all of these things, they change, and I will first of all show you how they change, and then kind of go through what it takes to do each one, and then maybe we can have you make your own and work off the same data to see if you can replicate some of the functionality. So first of all, I'm going to go to a website where we can find a script. I'm going to go to a site called VariableImporter.com. VariableImporter.com. As of this recording, this site will redirect you to my GitHub account, right to the place where you can download the script. I'm going to press enter, and it goes to my GitHub. In here, you'll see there's 3 files right there. One is called Variable Importer Legacy 1. That is version 7. That's when I was working on it and working out the kinks and adding new features. And then after we realized what it's going to be used for, and other people came forward and said that the previous one wasn't working for one reason or another, it's been now evolved to this version right there. What I'm going to do is click on this JSX file link, and it takes you to a page where all the code is right there. The thing is, what you want to do is click on the raw button so that you can right click and save as. I'm going to just save it on my desktop. And what you want to do is make sure you save it with a .jsx extension. So if it says text, just go ahead and delete that and save it, and make sure that if somebody asks, if your operating system says, what is it, make sure to use JSX. That's the extend script scripting extension, and that's how Illustrator will know that this is a script Illustrator can play. It can also use a JS extension as well. So I saved this entire thing, and I made sure to use the raw. Make sure to use the raw button so that everything is just plain text, because if you go back here and you try to go ahead and if you try to do like file save as, this is going to save the entire website, and you don't want to do that. It's not going to work at all. You can also just copy this whole thing and paste it, but I just like to save the raw file so that I know there's no character conversions or anything that happened, or anything random that could happen. And now I'm going to be able to go to File, Scripts, and go to Other Script and find my script inside of my desktop that I just downloaded. So VariableImporter.jsx, I'm going to open it up, and I'm presented with this dialog box which has all these different options and features, and I'll go over them all in just a little bit. But for now, what you do is you choose a data file. I'm going to go into my data folder inside of the sample zip, and I'm going to open up a data file, and it's going to do this, populate this drop-down box, and I already have it set up with some settings for myself, but I'm just going to import it. And what's going to happen is inside of my variables panel right here, all these things are now populated. First of all, the data set here, it doesn't say dataset 1, it's actually saying the name of the product, which is the pizza in this case. And it has also all of these variables that became imported, and they are also automatically bound to these objects. Now you'll notice in the objects column, these are names of the way I have these things named inside of the inside of my layers. And when you work in here, make sure to work inside with objects inside of layers instead of layers themselves, because it does not work with having this top level layer selected right there. You have to go inside of this triangle, and you have to click on the actual object. That's the actual art inside. In this case, it's the image. Okay, so this image, I just called that image. You just go ahead and you can type in whatever you want. And that's how it knew to bind the variable named image to an art placed item named image. And it is the same way with these text boxes. The one thing to watch out for is that whenever you type in a text here, like my text, and this is going to be probably, yeah, okay. I would like you to pay attention to the name inside of the layers. You can see I typed in my text, and then here it shows you my text. You might think this is the name of my text box. Well, that is in fact false, because, and the way you can test it is you can change this, and then you can see this changed. So what you're seeing is actually a preview of what is inside the text box inside of your layers panel. So it's actually lying to you. The way you have to name it is you have to explicitly make sure this stuff inside is not going to be the same as your name. If I was to name this, if my variable name was really named this, if I was to click this, I think it's naming it. It's actually not, because it's just thinking there was no change. So the way you can test this is, once again, just change it, and look at that. If it keeps changing, that means you did not name it. What you have to do is click here and say, and just put your name in here, like so. And now when I change this stuff right there, you can see it doesn't change the name. So that is one of those very frustrating things unless you've figured it out. Okay, the other thing to watch out for is that, well, I think that's all for now, but I'm going to cycle through these guys like inside of here, inside the variables. So I'm going to go to next, and you can see that it's changed the document completely. So it's replaced all of this stuff and this price, and it showed this where this wasn't visible before. And you can see how the visibility variables work right there. This has a visibility variable. This inside of the variables panel is represented by an eyeball. So everywhere it says an eyeball, that's a visibility variable that's going to affect whichever object it's bound to. And if it's shown, if it's set to show, it's going to show it, or not, to hide it. So if you go through to the next one, that's still saying organic for the salad, but if we go to the next one, it completely hides it. And the text variables are represented by this T icon, and then the image ones are represented by this image one, and the graphs one is the graph. Okay, so how was all this possible? Well, I just made all these R items, and I made sure to name them the same way I was going to have my data. And at this point, it's going to be time to look at my spreadsheet to see how this was happening. So I created this data in Excel. This is my Excel file, and this is the entirety of it. So here's how it works. First of all, your first row, it's recommended that you use a header, but with a script, you don't really have to. There's an option that you don't have to use a header. The plain title of a column right there, that is without any kind of special characters, is going to be representing that this is a text variable, just a regular text variable. So name and price, they're all text. Description, that's also text, and you can see in my cells I just wrote a long record right there. Now the visibility ones, they have a pound sign in front, and when it imports it inside the importer, that's how it knows to set it to be a visibility one. And then, following the InDesign convention, the at in front of a variable name will specify that it is an image variable. And one thing to know is that if you put an at sign into Excel and you type something, it's going to think that it's a formula. So if you type an at and you click anywhere else, it'll start doing some crazy things because it thinks it's a formula. What you have to do to include an at is to put a single apostrophe to comment out the at. So now when I went to the next column, this doesn't have the apostrophe in there, and it no longer thinks it's a formula. And when you export this as a comma separated value file or a text delimited tab file, it's going to not have that apostrophe in there, so don't worry about it. It's just an Excel thing. In other programs, that's not even an issue, but other things may be issues. Okay, and then last of all, there's this graph. It's denoted by this % marker. So any variable that is going to change the way a graph looks, it's going to have that % in there. And here's the way it works. So for a text variable, say this name, all you have to do is type in the text that you want to be replaced in the text box. It's pretty easy. Just type in the text, it's fine. With visibility variables, the way you had to do it inside of the XML file is you had to write true and false. Well, I made the script a little smart so you didn't have to really write true and false inside of your cells. You can just put any character. It doesn't have to be an X. It could be anything. Or you can put no characters, and it's going to convert those automatically to whether show or hide. So for example, if you want to show this whatever is going to be bound to this special variable, you just put something in that cell. So for now, we see that the pizza is the only item out of all these items that's going to be on special. And same thing with all these other ones. So the organic variable, that's the little guy over here, that's this art object right there. And it's being shown or hidden depending on what's in this column. So where it's going to be showing up is the cheeseburger and the salad. Those are both going to have it showing. And then these are my background. So all these columns right here, the veggies, the main, and dessert, that's just hiding or showing this part right there. And these are just simple art rectangles. They're just squares, and I just named them, renamed them this. As opposed to the text frame, naming images or naming vector art or anything, it's much it's not problematic because it doesn't depend on, it doesn't show you like what the preview is. You just name it. All right, so the next one would be the image. So typically in InDesign and Photoshop, they would have expected you to put in the entire file path to an image on your computer. In this case, we have in my sample folder, we have a folder called images, and it has all of these different images that are basically stock photos that I took in Photoshop, and I cropped out the background. I took out the background to make them transparent, and I also saved them in different formats as long as they had transparent outsides to show that Illustrator can bring in all valid formats, and they don't have to be the same kind of file. It could be different. So in this case, we have a PNG, we have a TIFF, we have a PSD, we even have a PDF that was made from Photoshop. This salad's actually a PDF made from Photoshop. And we also have this little guy that's actually not an image that's going to be replaced, but it's my placeholder image. It's just sitting in there. What we're going to do is we're going to link this folder to this data using the script. So we could actually put the entire path right here. The way I would do it is I would go down to the file. I would somehow get its properties or get info on the Mac. I would copy the path, and then I would just copy it, and then I would have also got the name and pasted it in here and did that. So now you have the entire path. Luckily with a script, you don't have to do that as you would have to with InDesign and Photoshop, because all you have to do is just put in the names and you tell the script where to find all the images. So you're saving some space and you're saving some headache, because you're not having to keep that path inside here as a long text. It can just be a simple name. All right, and then here comes the graph part. So at first I thought, how can we possibly incorporate graphs? Because as opposed to all these other variables which have a single cell of data, which has, you know, a single data content, a graph is actually a spreadsheet in itself. So how do you put a spreadsheet inside of a cell, inside of a spreadsheet? And I realized probably the best and the most standard one-size-fits-all way to do that is to have a folder where, just like linked images, you can have individual text files that are graphs. So I have a graph folder here. Inside there's a bunch of texts. The native way Illustrator would import graph data is to use tab delimited text files. So right here, you can see this is one of the most simple kind of files ever. It's just a text file. All it has is one number inside, because in this kind of graph, there's only one row or one column of data, and there's just 5 of these things. They're kind of like linked images. So this could be sort of a tedious process for somebody, but if somebody's really using this feature, what they could do is either make a macro to generate these files from their master file or however they do it. But the payoff is that it keeps your data consistent and then separates your data from your presentation, which is going to eliminate those errors where something's changed in the data, but it's not changed in your art template, and then the wrong template gets printed with the wrong information. So as long as you're keeping them apart and using an import process to generate your documents, then you can make it faster, make it more error controlled. Okay, so all of these are different variable names in this column, and there's a feature in the script where you can set it to where if you name things inside of your layers, and inside of your layers as in the objects, not the layers themselves. Layers really don't matter, it's the object inside. If you name them the right way, it's going to find them and it's going to bind them together. So in this case, what we have is everything was bound normally, and that's why we're able to produce this dynamic document that changes, and it's really great. Now you can see with the graph, I just created a simple graph using the graph tool. I just went down to, I went to a bar graph tool right there, and I dragged me one of these, and it generated me, oh, and first of all, it puts you this data right there, and it puts you a 1, and then here, you can't see the numbers really, they're small, but it goes from like 0 to 1 is all. Well, what you can do is, I'm just going to put an arbitrary like 78 right there and do a check. And I'm going to dismiss this box for the graph, dismiss it. And I'll go down to my graph, go to type, and now I can set its max value by going to, in this drop down from graph options to value axis, and then click on override calculated values, and I want it to be from 0 to 100, and I want it to have a total of 10 divisions inside of it. So when I do that, now we know that this is going to end at 100, and this is going to be my value, which is that 78. So the next step I did was some of these things in the graph you can't really change because it's kind of a complicated thing, but what I did was I just clipped it off. I used a rectangle and I basically clipped it off to where the legend doesn't show up anymore, the scale doesn't show up anymore. I just made my own one so that I could keep its color and numbers the way I want them. But this is the part that actually changes. So in here, this is my graph. And you see how it has double rows up there? Well, all that stuff is clipped off, kind of like in here, all that stuff is clipped off by this rectangle. And what you're seeing is just changing of that bar, and it's saying % daily calorie value, blah, blah, based on whatever. So when this document changes up, it's going to change this bar, the length of it, dynamically. It's going to do it based on the stuff inside of these text files right there. So,
Okay.
all right.
I've never used the graph tool. Now you're making me want to.
It could be useful in some places because you could, you know, do some things with data, and you can also do some effects on the graphs too. Now, not all of them work, and there's some special ways you have to apply them and all that. But as you can see in this graph, I was able to just click on the fill and change its color to whatever I needed it to be. So where's my colors? Well, I mean, I could just make it, say, pink, right, like that. And then when I change it, it's going to be totally variable. Let's go ahead and Okay, so now that graph is pink. Okay, so that's how I made my template. Now let's go ahead and revert it so we can go over the script options to import the data. Okay, so this is my Excel file. It has all the data in there, and the different variable types are populated. So the pizza is going to be on a special, meaning that inside the file this special thing is going to show instead of be hidden, and all the way around. So let's run that script again. I'm going to go to my desktop where I downloaded it, run it again. So let's go over this import box. First of all, there's a use headers checkbox. It means if you have a header row, like most times you would, is you have your names or variables in the first row there, it's going to recognize them. Otherwise, if you didn't have that, if you were to uncheck it, it could also work, but it would treat that first row as actual data. And another thing to watch out for in here is that you have to have your names of variables in here, not have any spaces and not have any special characters, except for that leading pound or leading @ sign or leading %, because my script's going to, first of all, when it reads them, it's going to replace that with nothing. It's going to strip it out for you. But you can't have an @ on the end or something that defies the XML naming convention. See, you don't want to name something with a space in between, like something with 2 words. Make sure to put an underscore to separate the words to keep them all in one kind of string. Otherwise, it's going to be complaining that the variable data is invalid, and the script is going to help you out before that. Whether you want it to or not, it's going to change everything to variable 1, variable 2, and so forth, and make it generic. It's kind of like a little foolproof that way, but if it happens to, then you'll know why. It also has a warning box, so I'm going to keep it on. Other options are to transpose it in case you had your data flipped the other way and your first column was your variable title and all the following columns were the rows, something like that. And there's also different presets. So in this case, I have a preset already saved. And the preset stores some attributes about your import, such as where you're getting all your images from. Okay, right here's the options box. When you click on here, it shows you all these different options. These are basically different warnings you can turn on and off that are regarding the script. There's a setting where if you also type in a double backslash, it's also going to create a line break. If you were in your Excel and you wanted to have a line break, say after here, you could type in a double backslash, and with that setting on, it's going to put a line break in there for you. Also in Excel, you can do a shift, or you can do an alt, or one of those things. I kind of forgot how you do it though. It's alt shift or something. And also you have to have it in your preview to wrap text or something. So in here, yeah, I think I just erased it. Or actually, I think I went up a cell. So is it? Oops. Okay. Trying to make it work. Okay, I put it in a trend. So basically on my Mac, and it's probably different for Windows as well, I was able to do Command, Shift, Return. No, it was actually Option Shift. Nope, it was actually Control Shift. Sorry, it was a Control Shift. Well, you know, to be safe, I just did Command, Control, Shift, Return, and now I'm able to see that it has a return in there, so I can go up and down, and also you can see, yeah, it's now in Excel in separate
What
lines.
was that command again?
Yeah, I just did, well, let's try it again. I just did Command, Control, Shift, Return.
We're kind of doing a video recording. That's what.
All right. So now I have 3 line breaks in here if I wanted to. I did it in Excel, but also if you didn't have this option, you could do the double backslash option as well. So I'm gonna undo all that. All right, and we're making today some restaurant menu items. Okay, so this section down here might be really important for you. This lets you change the dataset name, which when you export the file, it actually could help you control what the file is named. So this way, you can actually control the file name based on cells inside of your data. So in this case, what I did is I made sure that the name of the product is going to be part of my data set. And when you click this box, it has a 6 available fields in here. And right now, it doesn't have anything in field 1 because no data is imported. It only becomes really active when you import something in to be able to pull in a variable's name. Other than that, you can have a few different options, put in a space, increment underscore, or you can have custom text where you can do whatever and have that as part of your record. The increment is actually going to put a 1, 2, 3, 4 after your dataset name, because one of the rules in here is you can't have dataset names or record names that are duplicates, otherwise it's going to throw an error. And my script, if it finds that, it also makes your datasets generic and starts calling them record 1, record 2, record 3, if that is the case. You can disable this and do that. And if you import a file, it'll have a warning because there's a show dataset naming warning on here. So I'm going to go ahead and import the file over here from my sample data1.csv. And speaking of which, when I created this Excel file, I had to go File, Save As, and I chose comma separated values from my dropdown. It could also be, though, a tab delimited text as well. So right here, tab delimited text also works just the same way. It's just some people are more convenient, or okay. So that's what I did to save my CSV from an Excel workbook. Okay, so I open it up, and let's check out our dataset names. So when I do a test, you see it says the following dataset names are found more than once. And you know what? Because there is no thing to make this unique. It's just a bunch of text. So now everything is changed to record 1, record 2. But if we want to change this to increment, then see how it puts the name and then it puts the dash and the number, and that makes it okay. Well, I'm going to change it back to using the variable one value, the name, and when I click test dataset names, now it shows you what the names of the records are, so you can see whether you did it right or not, and if that's how you want it to be. So press OK on that. This next part is for if you want to save your XML file, because the way the script works is it takes your data from your CSV, it creates the XML file instantly by taking all of the information and putting inside those tags and making a text file out of it and instantly importing it into Illustrator and then instantly discarding it so it gets deleted automatically. If you want to check this box and keep what we have, we could check it. I'll just do it so we can see what the data looks like. Alright, and then you can choose where it's going. So right now it's going to go to my desktop, and I'll just keep it that way. But if you press this, you can also have it go to different places as well. Actually, I changed my mind. I want to just put it out here because it conveniently names this with the name of your data file, and then it adds vi_data.xml on the end of it. So as opposed to the native way where you did flyout menu and save variable library set variables XML, this one kind of gives you an idea of where it came from or what it's based on. Alright, so I'll save that. So now my path inside of here has changed. it's going to show you the whole thing in the yellow box if you don't want to scroll all the way like that. All right, and then there's the auto binding. So bind by name, that's the most commonly used feature to help you not go to your variables panel and click on objects and click on the variable and click the little Lego button right there. It's gonna automatically do it for you if you have your art objects all named the same way as your variables properly. A lot of people get confused though, because that's why I keep saying make sure to work inside of the layers, inside of the triangle. Don't work on the layers themselves. It's not going to work that way. Now here's a nice convenient way to make sure that you did it right. Sometimes when you do an import with the old version, it didn't have any such feature, and you'd find out that you missed something and have to do it again. No longer you'd have to do that. You can just click this Find Art button, and it can tell you how many variables are found in your data and how many names that are applicable that are in your document. So to do that, it's got to go through the document items and see if your text boxes are named the right names, and when it finds them and you get one for one or all for all, then you're good. Now the next option is for your images and your graphs. Right here is prepended paths. So if you didn't have these in there right now, well, when I unchecked it, actually it works from here. So like if I unchecked that and I went to show my log, it would show these images that are missing. So we have 0 found files, we have 5 missing files. That's because it really needs a full file path, and you can put that into your Excel sheet and that will work just fine. Well, this makes it more convenient. It kind of makes it more portable, because now you can send the same data file to different users, different computers, and they can add the path that's relative to their own computer. So you can pass the data back and forth. You wouldn't get that error file not found because somebody else's computer path is in your data. It makes it more generic, more reusable. Okay, so right now, what happens when you click on these file path buttons, I'm going to choose the folder, and I'm going to choose the images folder where I know for a fact all my images are. I'm going to click OK. And now when I click to show log, now you can see they're all found, and you can see that it's went to wherever I selected the folder, and it's put the entire path before the name that's inside of my Excel. So right here in my Excel, the name may be pizza.psd. But because I did that in the script, it put this whole path in there, and now it's ready to be found. And the same thing goes for my graphs. Now right now, it's saying that it's gone, so what I'm going to do is re-enter that folder in there as well and show it, and that updates it. And now this first variable display column, this is where you can see where, which kind of data are you bringing in from Excel. The icons are kind of the same as your native panel here. All I did is just make it draw those things, and I drew my own cute little icons. But each one of these you can click on, and it brings you where you can rename the variable and where you can change its type as well. So if you accidentally forgot to say put a pound sign on here or something, you can still, maybe go in later and change it over here explicitly, so as to not slow you down, perhaps. All right, so it shows you the whole paths in here. You can also change for individual things, like if you had more than 1 or more than 2 placeholder graphs or images and they go to different places. Well, let's say you have 10 and 8 out of 10 go to the same place, but then there's 2 that go to different places. Well, you can go to individual guys here, and you can choose this one only goes to this folder, and it should be really convenient that way. All right, and then the next one is the preset thing. So anything you change here or there, you can save it as a preset, so next time you open it up or you can load a preset, it's going to automatically populate these things in for you. So if you're redoing the same job, you're coming back to it, this is a very convenient way to not have to click a bunch. You can just click once and have these settings be there for you. And last of all, we have a testing panel where you can before you import, make sure that you got your data right, because more often than not, I'd miss something or forget something, and I would have a document with badly imported data. I'd have to revert it, and I'd have to go back, and I wouldn't really know what the problem was, and I'd have to think about it. Well, this way you can do it a lot faster. So all of the things in the different places, like test dataset names, this button here, well, it's also available in your test panel, so you can refresh it, and it shows you what the naming convention is, what your things are. And same thing for the image files. Right now, I guess I accidentally put my guys somewhere wrong or something. Down here, I accidentally put the image when I was demonstrating, can put them in different places to the wrong place. I made it go to the graphs, so I'm gonna put it again to the images. Also, I believe you can also go back to here and recheck this and put it there. But even more important, since I already have this as a preset, I can click here and I can go to activate, and then this is going to populate what I had before, the images right there. So
Do y'all ever use like revision controls, like 3DS or Kmax?
I'm not sure what that is, like version control?
Well, version controls, like let's say I'm working on a massive amount of work and I'm doing it on my personal computer, but I want to check it into the server, and then someone else wants to grab it. They won't always have like the same directory paths and all that. And I'm wondering if you can make the directory paths relative instead of just.
Well, the way they're made relative is just because of this script's way of adding that prepended path string. And what you can do is, well, each one of these settings files in the preset, when I go to save preset, it puts a file on my computer. So right here inside of my documents, I'm going to have a folder called Variable Importer right there.
Yeah.
And there's a variable importer settings.json. What you can do is actually pass this file around, and in here you'll find the different items, like all the file paths. It's just a one long string, but and it's a very long string. But for example, here's a path in there. As far as being relative, though, since every computer is a different user, I think the best way is just to go ahead and use this prepend path thing. So,
okay. I was just curious if there was a way. That's something I got spoiled with in some programs.
Yeah, in this case, it really stores the absolute path. So the best way to make it generic was just to have the people manually add this, and at least the presets help you not have to do it more than once.
Okay.
But you'd still have to just, the first time you do it is just click here and select where you're pulling it from. Okay, so the image files and the graph files, now I know that they're good to go. Now, without this, you know how I accidentally put the images into my graph folder? I would have imported it and it would have said wrong image, no image found, error. And I would have been like, oh no, what's going on? Would have had to do a bunch of troubleshooting. With this test panel, though, I was able to see that it wasn't going to work in the first place, so better not even try, better fix my stuff. Okay, then the art bindings. When you refresh this test, it'll show you, what you have. You can't really double click on these things, but it'll show you how many found items you have. Now, you can actually have more than one variable, more than one object in here inside of the object bound to the same variable. So you can have many different texts look in many different ways, flipped and rotated and reflected and hidden, anything. And they can all be bound to the same variable multiple times, so it can just change a bunch of different text a bunch of times. And they can all look different. And they can be inside of envelope distort and probably maybe opacitor masks too. I'll need to change that. So variables, they are quite powerful because they can work with a lot of appearance stuff. Now that I know that everything is in fact inside of the document, it's named properly, I can go ahead and I can do my import. But I want to go back here and I want to check my keep XML file, because when I loaded my preset, that change that we made, because I want to keep the file, it went away. I'm going to click this again and I'm going to put this in my file sample folder, and this time I'll show you how to override a preset or add a new one. So I'm going to add a new preset and I'll say just test2. So now it's not only going to keep all these things in the preset, it's going to have the image and the graph path. It's also showing the XML one. By the way, it is looking like this, is a relative one, but then this one is not. And some people have different drives where one thing may not mean the other thing. So I think definitely the see the relative path, it's just for the scripts usage, it's fine. But for the XML, for Illustrator to get the image file, it's got to start at users and it's got to have the absolute path, I believe. Okay, so I'm going to add this, and not only that, I'm going to save presets. And when it does that, it shows you where it saves this, where basically it's showing you this file is there and it's been successful. And okay, so now we can do an import, and just like my first show, I put it in. Okay. And now we're back to where everything can change. So now we have different things changing, and they're looking good. What we don't have is a whole bunch of resulting files. So here's what we have to do for Illustrator that we don't have to do for other things. So we have to go to our actions, and then we have to build a new action to batch process this. So I already have a little action set here. I'm going to remake it for you guys. So I'm going to say flyout menu, new action in the set. Actually, I'll just make a new set altogether. What you do is you go to the actions panel, you click on the folder, you say, you put in your name you want for your action set, and then you click this icon to create a new action. So I'm going to say export, I'm going to just call it that, and I'm going to start recording. So all I'm going to do for this one is I'll just do a very simple save for web, but you can do any of the Illustrator exports that are available. So I'll just do, what did I do last time? JPEG. Well, this time I'm going to make this JPEG 100%, and also I'm going to size it to 200% size. So 100% quality, 200% size, and I'm going to save it, and it's going to ask me where to save it. Well, I'm going to put it my destination where I'd like it to go. I already have a folder called output where it might be blank because when I uploaded the zip there was nothing in there. I might as well just delete things in there to recreate that. Okay, so I'm going to delete all my previous results so that we have this. I'm going to go to my output, and I'm just going to save it. I'm not going to worry about changing this file name, because what we're doing is we're recording the action of saving this file with these settings. The actual destination doesn't matter, because in our batch processing we're going to override it. So I'm going to save it. And now we're pretty much good to go. I'm going to click the stop button right there, and I'm going to uncheck all the dialogues because I don't want that every time popping up during my batch process. So uncheck the dialogues so they are no longer there. And now all I have to do is just go to the flyout menu and go to the batch, the very scary looking batch button right there. Now, this is a whole different animal too. But what you want to make sure is that instead of folder, where you go through a folder of images to batch process, you actually click on datasets, which takes away your source, but your source becomes your one template document. And now you can choose one of these guys to, and destination is always going to be none, but what you do is you choose the override export commands. Now because save for web is an export command, I went ahead and I clicked that and I chose my destination as my output, as my folder where I want it to go. It's pretty much the same folder where I saved it, but doing this will make sure that I can change my file name and it won't be saved to the same file over and over. It'll be different files. And furthermore, when I have these options available, you can have the dataset name in your file name. So this is exactly how you can pull in data from a spreadsheet and make sure your files are going to be named that. Okay, and then all I have to do is press the OK button, and you can see Illustrator is going to go one by one and switch out all the stuff, and it's going to export. And now we're done. So in our output folder, we have, including our sample document, which I'm going to delete, we have our whole a whole set of files here. So we have all the different items. And that is how variable data is done in Illustrator.
Yay.
11:30.
You can do more than one clap.
Oh, and the audience roars.
Dueler for the late guy. No,
I have a question though.
Oh, any questions? You guys,
Yes,
what's your question?
Well, the XML, when you save the file.
Oh, you guys want to see? You guys want? Oh, I know exactly
Well,
what you want.
Okay,
Yeah.
So I just wonder about that. I mean, because I know Illustrator natively takes the XML, and that's the whole reason this is built, right? Is because you can work inside of the environment that's more familiar, like Excel, and then it transfers that data to XML.
Mm-hmm.
But can you transfer the XML file to somebody? I mean, because it has those prepended those paths.
Well, here it is. Let's take a look. Now, remember, I put the keep XML on so we can examine the data.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going to open it up in my text editor right now, and we'll see what's in there. Okay, so this is our spreadsheet. Now, do you see the familiarity? It used to look like that, and now it looks like this. So now we have, first of all, in this block, a list of all the variables. That's all the names, and that's pretty much our header row, this first row right there. Then we have our rows. So this sample data set, all the way to down here is one single record. So since this has all four variable types, let's take a look. Our text, it's very simple. It has a tag that's named the variable. Inside is a p paragraph tag, and then there's the word pizza inside of our cell. It's simply there. Inside of here, it's surrounded by all this stuff. Price, same thing, but let's get down to, oh, and here's our visibilities. So these are all visibility variables. They all say true and false, whereas the spreadsheet only had X or nothing. Okay, now here is our file path. So for Illustrator to be able to get the file, it doesn't really work with relative files. So if you were to go here, I think, and do this, and let's say I'm going to say test. So I'll rename this file. So I just put in that right there. So if I go to revert this and import the data, let's see what happens. Manually done, you just go down to the variables panel and you go to load variable library and find the one you want. Okay, and nothing binds. This is the manual process. So you have to click here, and you have to click here, and then you have to click here to make it linked. So let's see. The one that I changed was the pizza one. So let's see what happens. So I go down to the pizza, and it says the filter cannot complete because of a known error. So that path wasn't good. Maybe it's just that I had all these slashes in there. So I take one more slash away. Let's try that. So I'm going to import it again. Let's see what happens. Okay. All right, and now let's go down to the pizza. Okay, still can't do it. So now let's try it without this thing that says file on there. Let's see if that's going to work. And by the way, these things, these features, they may look the same. They actually change from version to version a little bit. So for example, in CS5, there was a bug where these things wouldn't work at all and they had to fix it in a patch. So who knows, maybe they will one day change this whole thing, or maybe they'll make it to where you can put relative paths. So I'm going to do that and do one more experiment. So let's say load variable library. I'm going to put that in. Okay, and then go to my pizza again, and still it doesn't work. So it has to be absolute, and it has to have that file : ///. That's how that works. But any other questions? Oh, and by the way, since we're on this, see, over here is the graph. So it took that text file, opened it up, and made it into a mini spreadsheet within a record, because all these number of columns, row, value, the one single number, the stuff that controls this little bar. And I can just hide my clipping path and other things to show you what it really looks like. You can see this graph, it's just one bar, and it's a very simple guy. Like now here to show you how fast it is. Basically what I did is I erased my variables, so I can't change them anymore to show you the graph change. I'll just go and run this thing again, and because I have my presets already good to go, all I got to do, find my data and click import, and because it's already been done previously successfully, it's really quick. So now I can see this graph change. This is the way it looks unclipped. This guy, that's what I'm talking about, the problems with graphs with the colorings. So, you know, say I wanted to change this to any other color to, you know, make it green. So what happens when I change my variables? Some attributes stay and some don't. So I click to next. Well, hey, there it goes back to black. You know, what gives? Let's see if I can take my direct selection and put a crazy effect in there. I'm kind of stuck in 3D today, so let's just do a 10-point extrusion on here. Okay, so this graph is good. Now when I go to next, hey, there it goes, snaps right back. However, if I change the fill, like if I was to change this to, well, maybe like a pattern swatch, let's see what happens. And it's really fun to experiment sometimes. See, the pattern swatch stays. Interesting stuff, huh? Any more questions?
You said different objects can be binded to the same variable.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain that?
Yeah, so you can have many different, so say I have this really pretty text, but then let's say there's also an area in this particular place where you need to have the same thing but written in a different font. So I'm going to make a little quick placeholder right there, right over here. And inside of my layers, oh, here's my layers. Well, I'm going to make sure, first of all, the name I'm going to have it is different than the text inside. I'm going to change this to have the same name. Okay, and then when I bind it again, what I can do is just manually do it again. So let's see. So I have to click on an already bound variable here, and I can go to make text dynamic, and it says all the bound objects values don't match, blah, blah, blah. But I'm going to press OK, and now you can see there's two names and two things right there. So if I go to another record, you can see how it says salad here. It says also salad right down there. But the thing is, now if I was to export this file, if I was to want to pass it to some other user, a coworker, so I say variable library like before and put it there. Here's what's going to happen. If I try to load this same library, it's not going to work because it's going to complain. It says the incoming library is invalid. The reason it's invalid is because you have two different variables. It's a one-way trip if you want to bind the same variable to multiple places. So that's one thing to watch out for. However, with the importer, say you can have a bunch of these text boxes and they all look different. So I'm going to revert it and just test it out just for funsies again. So I'm going to say like a text box here, and so I'm gonna like say put a fill in there, maybe make it like orange. Okay, and then I'm gonna put it also right down here, and I'm gonna make this fill like that, and I'm gonna change the font in it to be something totally different. And this time I'm also gonna go totally crazy and do that 3D effect again, because I'm just so nuts about them today. Okay, so like 5 points there. So what do we have? It's actually on the fill right now, so I want to take this and put it on the entire object instead of just the red fill. So now there's no black stuff behind it. All right, so now what's going to happen when we import the same data? And so now you can see in a real production environment when people are revising things and changing things, and you have to do the same thing again, and you're like, ah, man, this is crazy. And I've been there, so that's kind of inspired me to do that. So I'm just going to use my same preset and instantly import the same data, and it really makes it effortless compared to what it was before. By the way, none of that worked. You know why? Because all the text I added, it's not named my right thing, so it wasn't going to work anyways. But still, though, also could have changed. I also could have noticed that, because if I would have been so smart as to, instead of rushing through, just went ahead and I went to here and found the art, and I saw that I have just the same amount of text as before. So right now we found 5 out of 3. So that means there's 3 text variables, but there's 5 text boxes with that name. So if you go to the test and also do the same thing here, you see that for the name variable, there's 3 different text elements. So I'm going to import that, and now it's going to work for sure, since I know that is the case. Okay, so you can see these guys, that's pizza, and that is pizza. All right, and then when you change it, it starts changing just like the rest of the stuff. Very neat stuff, you guys, very neat. Ooh, any more questions? How about you there in the back? Do you have any questions? All right, he knows it all.
We're kind of
Yeah,
close
this is it.
But yeah, you want to, yeah. You can go ahead and kill the.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye. I hope this gets edited to take out the awkward stuff, and actually somebody re-narrates the whole thing.